061 to apply for a loan of up to 200,000 Rand. Direct access. With us, you can.
Welcome back. Chicken exporters have been quick to counter questions about the safety of poultry. It comes after China reported that chicken wings from Brazil tested positive for the coronavirus. But despite these assurances, you can imagine another food safety crisis in South Africa like that listeriosis outbreak 2 years ago could bring our medical sector to its knees. That's the view of Professor Lisa Korsten, a professor and co-director for the DSTI-NRF Centre for Excellence in Food Security. She says 420,000 people die from foodborne diseases every year around the world. Well, Professor Korsten joins us now. Professor, good evening to you. Thank you for your time on the pulse. I thought food products wouldn't be able to carry COVID-19, especially if the food is frozen or dried in some way. I presume if it comes from Brazil to South Africa, it is before it gets here. Can it really transport COVID-19?
Okay, yes. If the COVID, the virus, and it's very important, can survive on surfaces. We already know that they can survive up to 72 hours on certain surfaces, such as metal. The whole issue is around frozen environments, and particularly in terms of exported fresh produce or exported frozen products. So the question is, can it survive on products such as frozen wings? And I want to state that it's not only chicken wings that's been in the news. We've had cases with salmon imported from different countries and different meat products, so it goes beyond just chicken wings.
How do we then make sure the food is safe? Do we need to freeze it for a certain time, or do we need to heat it properly before we eat it? I would have thought cooking would deal with it as well.
Oh yes, cooking would. And what's very important is that there is no scientific evidence that a frozen product that's been imported can actually cause COVID within the population and spread from there. What we do know is that inspectors have tested containers, the inside of containers. They have tested the packaging material of products. They have detected the SARS-CoV-2 virus on those products. It doesn't mean it's infectious, and that's very important to note. So far, the World Health Organization, the CDC, EFSA, and all the international bodies have come out and clearly stated that food is still safe, but we must still be precautionary, and we must make sure that all the processing facilities follow all the COVID requirements. And that's a very important point.
So just so that I understand, and just to be very clear, any kind of cooking would deal with the virus, no matter whether the coronavirus is there or not. So microwaving it, boiling it, broiling it if you want to, sticking it on a stove and frying it, whatever it is, all of that would deal with the virus.
Oh yes, it does, as with most of your microbes. So it is very important that we are not consuming raw meat, we are cooking it. And it is very important that we consider all the requirements of COVID compliance. When you handle a product, when you purchase a product, when you transport it, and if you have people that's COVID positive and they are working in a food environment. And that's why all these factories and processing plants follow the COVID requirements. What is notable is that in the USA and Germany and several countries, we've had significant outbreaks of COVID, and particularly in abattoirs or meat processing facilities. And that should not be confused that the product is dangerous. And that's very important.
It's quite hard to know for sure how the coronavirus entered human beings, but it could have been through the food chain. I mean, people talk about bats. Could we see more viruses like this coming through the food chain? They enter humans through what humans eat in some way. And I'm not talking just about COVID-19, but COVID-35, if such a thing exists.
Yes, I mean, we can look in general, and keep in mind the food chains are long, it's extensive, it's usually handled within a very specific environmental set of conditions. For instance, temperature regimes. We not only process and pack it, but the minute we start moving it around, we contain that whole cold chain. We make sure that it's not interrupted and that the product from the point of departure to the point of supplier or purchase that there's integrity in that whole chain. And there's also traceability. And that's a responsibility of the whole food industry. And I can assure you, they are really complying. And they are doing everything that everybody is possibly doing to manage the risk. And that goes for all disease. It doesn't mean it cannot happen. And we know from the listeria experience that we've had foodborne pathogens in our food chain, in our food system. So it's not impossible. It depends on the pathogen and the level of risk.
I mean, it would seem from listeriosis, people would have learned how careful you have to be. I mean, that was a specific thing to a specific plant in a specific place. But it does show you how important all of this is.
It's extremely important. And I want to assure you and the public that there's incredible level of commitment from the industry and from government to ensure that the food is safe. But I must also point out we have a lot of illegal food moving into the system. And it's almost impossible to control it at all our ports. You cannot have enough inspectors, and we shouldn't be testing all our food. We should trust the food system that the food is safe. And yes, it's inevitable that something can go wrong, and it does happen, and it will always happen. But it's managed, there's a commitment, and I can assure the public the food is safe. And we need to do our bit as well at home. You need to make sure that the food that you serve to your family is compliant and you have followed your own rules and washing your hands and making sure that your environment, your family is safe.
I'm quite interested in you say we shouldn't have food being tested, really?
Not to the, we should have food tested, but not to the extent that you test every single batch. You cannot test every container that comes into the country. You cannot test every batch of food and every shop selling food. You cannot. The cost will be too high. We cannot even test all the people in terms of COVID. You know, so it's also about priorities. Where do we push our money at a time like this? Do we test every single food product? No, we shouldn't. We should make sure that the system is in place and that the industry is following it and that they are compliant. But we cannot test everything. You don't test compliance into a system.
Professor Lisa Korsten, really do appreciate the time. I'm with you now. Thanks very much indeed.